Thank you. Good morning, all. My name is Tomás Zaborowski. I come from Bayer, very close from here, but originally also from Argentina. What I wanted to do today, and thank you, Margaret, for your presentation and the impact on climate. Today, I would like to talk a little bit about nature also. And besides certain cautionary principles, we have to do this in terms of any forward statement that you will see in the presentation. But besides that, I think that most of you might know who is Bayer. And Bayer is a company focused on science and innovation in nutrition and in agriculture, with 3 divisions, with 100 employees, but I'm working on the agricultural side, on the division that today has a turnover around of 34 million US dollars and euros, sorry. But what I wanted to say is that I will try not to talk about Bayer at the beginning. This is what I would like to show you. How we can start a strategic approach on accounting the main challenges that humankind has. Also, what is the call to action in terms of nature and what nature becomes, and it's starting to be important as well in our strategies. And also, what is the ESG? How many of you know what ESG is? And please feel free to interrupt me and make any questions. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, which are the main frameworks on the way that companies discloses their impact in related topics on sustainability. And then I will talk about regenerative agriculture and what is Bayer approach. So when we started our sustainability journey, we said, okay, how do we start? Where do we prioritize? Where do we see the challenges? And that's what we found a very interesting framework called the planetary boundaries, usually done by the Stockholm Resilience Center, that actually pictures 9 very big topics that are becoming human challenges in terms of how to approach them, because we are depleting far beyond what the planet can deliver today. And saying that, well, we are depleting the planet with many different topics. There is 1 billion people that go to bed hungry every night. Saying that, we said, okay, what our company can focus on and how we can make a change? We saw that biodiversity, here it's shown as biosphere integrity, also food security and climate are 3 main topics that we can focus on. Going back into, for example, what the World Economic Forum says, biodiversity, together with climate change, is one of the 10 main topics that companies should focus on. Climate today, it's in every company. In every sustainability strategy, you will see that climate is at the top. Most of them, and I will show it later, we have commitments. But what about biodiversity? How companies are aware on the impact that today we have in nature. And saying that, today, according to the IPBES, they report that 1 million species of planet and animals are facing extinction today. So what we can do and what does this mean for agriculture? Well, for example, today there is an average abundance of native species in most major land-based habitat that has fallen by at least 20%, mostly since 1,900 years. Then also 90% of our soils are expected to be depleted by 2050. And today, currently, dam degradation has reduced productivity in approximately 23%. Besides that, it is estimated that 10% of the insects are being threatened, and many countries today report declines in populations of birds, but that are critical for cross-pollination and for making agriculture more productive. That accounts that 75% of global food crop types rely on animal pollination. And besides that, today, 9 out of 600 crops that we have available in agriculture today account for 66% of total crop production. So this also accounts that today there are reductions in the diversity of cultivated crops that actually also make that our biodiversity on land is not taken care of. Saying that, what is the call to action that today companies are working on? Today there is a call to action to act fast in nature as well. And the main call that we have is that today we need to turn that down. There should be a tipping point on the trend of declining of biodiversity by 2030 if we would really want to achieve a net zero by 2050. And that's usually very difficult to do because usually when you talk about climate, you will see that climate, it's quite easy to measure. You have CO2 equivalent, and then you say, okay, this is one of my main metrics, and that is where I will set my target. How actually we do that for nature? How do we do that if we want to become nature positive? Which means that we need gains, health and abundance, diversity and resilience of species, an ecosystem compared to a 2020 baseline. But still this is very difficult to define, to describe, and to get consensus, because when we talk about biodiversity, it can be the crops and the diversity of the genetic resources that you use, or orangutans at a tropical forest. So what is happening today is that there is called a nature positive initiative where companies are already working together defining what nature positive means. Usually this is mainly driven by association, and that's where we can start thinking about what is natural capital, what we can do, how do we address it, because usually nature capital is an invisible asset. We are not aware, and I think that that's one of the main challenges. We don't know what is happening today in our operations around biodiversity, about nature. And that's where I believe that that's where the change should happen. Because going back, if you see today, nature today is intrinsic in every business. And if you go and talk about climate, today 83% of companies are already having acknowledgement of the implicancies, interdependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities that you can have with climate, but only 5% in relation to biodiversity. But that is changing. Lots of things that are happening. The question is, are we ready today to take action to do that? What is happening today, I will put it in 4 main frames that are affecting frameworks. And I will start with the first one usually, which are customers and employees, usually neglected. But today, for example, with the latest survey, 83% of the employees, they say that they would like to work in a company that actually are mindful about their impacts on biodiversity, on nature, and sustainability. But besides that, since 2019, the Global Biodiversity Framework has been launched that has set concrete targets for companies to start acting on how to approach biodiversity. Companies that are starting to work today on nature positive, they will be more prepared for future regulations. So it's something that is not only for doing what it needs to be done, but also because it will be requested. So we need to be prepared for that as well. And then you can minimize the disruption that your company has. Also today you find different guidance and frameworks. I don't know how many of you know, but the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Disclosure, together with the European standards on reporting, they're going to require that companies report on their nature impacts. Today, mainly voluntary, but there are also other frameworks like the Task for Nature for Financial Disclosures, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that as an example. They're also requiring in a voluntary framework, how do we disclose our impacts with nature? Saying that, why this is happening is because companies are more conscious. Yes, that could be. But usually financial investors are the ones that are starting to ask companies to disclose their impacts, interdependencies, risks, and opportunities in nature. These are the owners of our companies. So they have a lot of power to start asking us on how we should start being more transparent. So as I said, frameworks like the Global Biodiversity Framework, financial disclosure requirements, financial institutions requiring that, but also customers and employees going into this framework. So this is what it goes into an ESG perspective, and this is where we need to think and rethink our approach with nature, but how we can achieve this way forward. The main topic that I will show as an example is TNFD, the Task Force for Nature Financial Disclosures. It has been launched in September, so 1 month, 1 month ago, and it provides a framework for companies to assess and disclose nature-related risks, dependencies and opportunities, and it complements with CSRD, for example. So the most important thing is that this framework was co-created with financial institutions, corporations, and also different market service providers that accounts today 20 trillion in assets. So it's not only something that it has been created from a group of environmentalists. No, it was constructed by many different bodies of the value chain, starting from investors. So today, the benefits of having this type of disclosure is not only understanding that, yes, it's another burden that we will have in 20,000 reports requirements that we have today, but actually to be aware internally of where do we have our interdependencies. I will not go, but it has a very interesting framework that is called LEAP, that actually focus on how you locate your impacts in nature, how do you evaluate them, how do you assess them, and how do you report them. Doing that, what is important is that you start to discover that invisible risk that companies usually have and their dependencies on natural capital. So at the end, getting that internal diagnostic is one of the main benefits, and the financial investors actually will be more able to understand, when I want to invest in a company, what are the risks inherent in nature, as they do today with climate. So when we start seeing that nature is important from our company perspective, you start to see different companies launching different commitments. One of these main commitments is about regenerative agriculture, and this is where I will start talking about agriculture. Today, agriculture is one of the main problems, but also it can be the solution. Basically, because we have the technology and the innovation to actually make agricultural change. And that's what I will talk. So this regenerative agriculture, how many of you have already listened to it? 1, 2, 3, 4, half of the room maybe. The important thing is that this is not a buzzword. So you see today different companies in the value chain like Cargill, Unilever, PepsiCo, already addressing that they're going to change their value chain in terms of regenerative agriculture. The main complexity that we have today is that today regenerative agriculture is very difficult to describe, to conceptualize, basically because for each farmer, agriculture could be different. So growing one crop could be different even in the same plot where they're growing because of the different practices. So it's very difficult. Again, as I mentioned, when we wanted to talk about biodiversity, it's very difficult to define regenerative agriculture. So today, there is no consensus, so you start to see differences between one and the other one of who is the one that is right and who is the one that is wrong. I think that a company like Bayer, what needs to do is actually provide certainty on how regenerative agriculture could be adapted into different markets, into different crops, into different farmers even. So today, each actor has different interdependencies, and what usually I've seen many different frameworks evolving on how to define regenerative agriculture. Some might say that regenerative agriculture should not be with chemicals. Other ones say that it is. Other ones say that it should be minimum tillage. Others ones say that it should be another practice. But nobody says that the farmer is the one that needs to implement that. So the farmer today is in the center. And our companies or these frameworks actually needs to provide the farmer the tools and the knowledge to make this regenerative agriculture profitable. Because if not, it will never be scalable, it will never be adopted. And what is the background of what had happened in agriculture? And how are we able to say, yes, we will have to go into this direction? If you see this picture, it's a real picture, and it's one of my favorite pictures because it shows the evolution of agriculture. If you see 1940, you see all the land that it was needed to produce 250 kilograms of crop. And you see with different introduction of technologies, how that the same amount of land, the amount of land you need to get the same amount of kilograms. Now, it's very nice, you see the evolution from 1940 up to 2019, but look the future. If you see the future, we cannot reduce anymore. So we will have to implement far much more different tools to not only do it with less land or with less inputs, but also restoring the land that we are using. Because we cannot keep on reducing the land. So we need to restore it. And that's where we think that we can have a better definition of what for us is sustainable agriculture, regenerative agriculture. So for us, as I said, farmers should be in the center, and there should be very clear benefits in outcome-based systems. We don't want only to produce yield or a crop, but also how we can produce it in a better way that the outcomes are not only yield, but it could be carbon sequestration, biodiversity improvement or preservation, conservation of water, and also soil health. And soil health is the center of this agriculture. When I talk about an outcome-based system, usually, and I'm not going to go into the details of agriculture, but the principles are the same that has been in terms of sustainable agriculture, conservation agriculture, and many. Minimum disturbance of soil, soil coverage, rotations, and also minimizes the inputs that you're using in the same field. And now, yes, I will try to go more into the specific, not going too much in detail of what it's agriculture. So also, if you want, you can make any question as well. But Bayer has made a commitment like 4 years ago, many commitments, actually 4, where it was very difficult. I talk about ESG, and I know that is a lot of content of what I have shown today, but I try to skim you through the whole complexity of the topic. But also, when we started working on a sustainability strategy, usually when we interacted with different stakeholders, we wouldn't say, no, we want to change agriculture. And I said, yes, but what is the impact of your CO2 in your direct operations? Yeah, in our direct operations, maybe we have 100, but if we change the way that farmers produce, reducing their carbon, maybe that will be far much more impactful in a positive way. If we reduce the environmental impact of the products that we produce, that will be far much more impactful if we do it only for our operation. But the conversation was very difficult at that time, saying that we aim to solve certain challenges of planetary boundaries. I say, yeah, but I want to see what is happening in your direct operations. Show me how this is connecting to your sustainability reporting. And then I said, well, maybe we're doing something wrong. We should focus on our operations and not helping the farmers to actually become more sustainable. And today you're seeing, when we talk about regenerative agriculture, that we were not that wrong. Because actually we advanced on working on downstream, where the real implications and the solutions would be. And that is very well connected to the benefits that I just mentioned of what we're aiming into the regenerative agriculture. How we started working on this commitment was very tough and still is. And commitments and targets in sustainability and ESG frameworks are very complex because sometimes we don't know how to measure, sometimes we don't have the data, sometimes we don't have the greatest models. And then, of course, even we try to do everything perfect, we have greenwashing claims. And it's okay. Usually when somebody comes and says, yes, but we have somebody that says that this is not wrong, let's be transparent. Let's talk and show the way that is our thinking and use this as an open dialogue platform, because we don't have all the answers. We don't know how to do everything, but yes, we want to make that change. So we're very open for dialogues and conversations on how we can continuously improve the way that we set our targets and that we work on our commitments. But also, this is nice, but the way that I believe in sustainability is that where the sustainability is embedded in our business. So if there is a concrete opportunity from a business perspective, also this will be sustainable in the long run. Saying that, today Bayer serves a market of 340 million acres, but if we really focus on the regenerative agriculture market, there is also an opportunity. And we aim to show that amount of new 60 million acres with different technologies that we can also put in the market. How much that represents into money is that today there is a lot of money in terms of regenerative agriculture going to the normal ag input markets of 100 billions to doubling it by 2030. So today, regenerative agriculture needs a lot of investment, and especially more in the farmer level. Who is going to finance the farmer changing all these practices and usually having certain losses in their productivity because of these changes nobody's talking about? So we do a lot of commitments, but also who is going to help the farmers to become more profitable as well while we're doing that. So we have started not only focusing on the main countries or on the main regions, we have a global approach on that one, because as I mentioned, each regenerative agriculture will be different, with different trade-offs, with different benefits, with different focus in the market, with different focus. So all these benefits will say, okay, we have examples in North America with the introduction of cover crops in different rotations, which actually brings more than 1,000 kilograms of carbon sequestration to the farmer. Or then we talk about, for example, the North America soybean, where we have different ways of incorporating different rotations into the schemes. Tomatoes in EMEA, that actually, because of the way that the tomato is produced, it sequestrates carbon and also reduces the impact in terms of water usage. But I will show one very specifically in Latin America, because this one is something that we have started to work 8 years ago. And agriculture is not something that you can change from one year to another one. It takes a lot of time because of the normal nature cycles, the cycles of nature. So we are very glad that we have started doing that since 8 years ago. We're introducing different types of crops into the same area, let's call it like that, like corn, then a cover crop, then a soybean, then wheat, then soybean. After a 3-year period, the productivity of the system increasing 13%, the margin of the farmer increasing 22%, but the carbon sequestration increasing 65%, and accounting for 1.5 tons of CO2, which also increases the biomass, and I don't want to go very specific, but also reduces the amount of sprays. So in all of these examples, what I wanted to show is that nature today is one of the new topics, although not new, but an invisible risk that is coming back to be upfront, as it happened with climate, as it happened with human rights, and it's something that we should start acting on. Thank you.